Hey folks, welcome back to the Pulse. It is 11:30 Central Texas time. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. And today we're talking about our new money. This is going to be the kind of stream that you want to listen to over and over again. At least that's my hope. Been inspired today. In 1582, the Pope Gregory VIII decided to change the calendar. It was called the Gregorian calendar. And think about this for a second. Throughout history, governments, religious groups that are tied to the government, whatever it may be, have made edicts about changes in many things. In this case, it was the very nature of how we counted the days. In 1582, there were actually 10 days left in that year. They cut them out because things had gotten off by 11 seconds a year from the Julian calendar, and things really got out of whack. And in that lies a very important tale for us in this era, in this blockchain era, in this era of new money. I don't think most people understand how high the stakes really are. And I want to describe to you how much power you actually have. And it's really the power that we have together. So let me give you an example. Let's say I say to Brandon, Brandon, let's meet at the gym, because Crypto Heartbeat's such a, heavy lifter. Let's meet at the gym at 3 p.m. And so, of course, 3 p.m. comes and I show up at the gym and I don't see Brandon anywhere. And I call him on the phone. I say, Brandon, where you at? He goes, I'm at home. I said, well, what do you mean you're at home? Didn't we agree we'd meet at 3 p.m.? And he says, yeah, it's not 3, it's 2. I'm like, hold on a second. No. I look at my watch, check my phone. I go, no, it's 3 p.m. He goes, I said, this is Central Time Zone, right? He goes, no. I am on Mountain Time. I grew up in Colorado, which is not true. And I've just always liked Mountain Time. So I'm on Mountain Time. And I said, well, hang on a second, Brandon. It's very difficult for me to meet you at 3 p.m. at the gym if you're going to operate as if you're on Mountain Time when we're clearly here in Central Texas in Central Time Zone. Why is it that we agree on what time it is? And why is it that we agree on what year it is? Because here's the thing that's really interesting. When we think about money, we have to understand it in a very similar way to how we think about time. It seems really obvious. You wouldn't think, well, I live in the Central Time Zone, but I'm going to operate on Mountain Time. No, it'd be really difficult. You'd be an hour early or late for everything. See, in this kind of silly story lies an important tale about money and what's happening right now with our new money. If we go back into history and we look at the nature of bartering, and you see this in places where it's more remote. So let's say the Old West, the Wild West, as they went out and they conquered the West in America. There were mining towns. That was a big part of what drove people out into the West was opportunity. There were incentives to go west. And one of the incentives to go west was, hey, you might strike it rich working in the gold fields or wherever it may be. And so these centers of economic value that were understood by the people of the time gave them an idea. Let's go. Let's go. It's got to be better there than it is here. So hope in one's heart drove them west. Well, they got there, and obviously not everybody, struck it rich. But what's interesting about this is they got into these towns, and these towns really were challenged to develop society. In fact, there was a town in Utah that was paying people if they would have children. They pay you for every child you had in town. This is obviously the mid 1800s. But why? Well, what's interesting and what happened in those times is people obviously created value and they did different things. They had different skill sets, but they found themselves in the same proximity. They found themselves in this new mining town. And in this new mining town, everyone did something differently. There was probably a farrier, a blacksmith. There was probably the baker and the butcher. And David Lee ran the general store. Well, what was going on was people came into the general store, and Brandon walked into the general store and he saw David Lee and he said, "Hey, Brandon, how you doing?" He goes, "Well, been working, but I don't have any money on me right now. But you know what? The kids need milk and we need some food." And so what happens? The relationship between Brandon and David Lee has been established because he knows Brandon. He says, "All right, I'll give you some credit. Just pay me next week." And so in that time, there was this agreement that was made because I knew who you were and I knew that you were stuck in this town with me and I knew that you were working at the mine. And so it was much easier to exchange value. But many of these towns, and this happened also in Europe as well, is that when currency was not plentiful, there wasn't a lot of currency, they would make up traders' tokens. And these would be tokens that would be created in that proximity, in that area, the purpose of which was so that they could trade value as a proxy for their labor. And they understood something inherently about what Brandon did. He worked in the mine and the general store. What do I do, right? What does the baker and the butcher and the farrier and all these people do? And so this understanding grew out of this. And so what did they say? Hey, we're in a remote area. We've got this gold mine. Let's create a proxy for our labor. So whatever you think about money, you have to rethink it because money is just a proxy for your labor. So what is it? It's a representation of goods and services. Well, what are goods and services? But they're out of the creative ability that you have. So really, it's an extension of you. Richard Hart always talks about you can draw a picture of a pony if you'd like to. And this is an illustration of your creative ability being able to create something that may or may not have value. We do this all the time in our lives, and it's what separates us from the animals. But if we don't have US currency or your nation's currency, we're still going to do business. Why? Because there's things I have that you need, and there's things that you have that I need. And what you realize is when you recognize civilization for what it is, and these humans that you are in community with have different skills and abilities. And thank God they do, because not everybody is as good as another person is working steel and shoeing horses. But the point is that in community, we create value, becomes a body of many parts. And then we decide, hey, the kids need to eat and you've got extra on your farm, right? Or I need credit or whatever it may be. And so what grows out of that is this bartering system that's based on value. But that value, each time it's traded, is agreed upon. And the reason I shared the story of the Gregorian calendar at the beginning is that these were edicts by the government or by the church to say, we're going to do this. And everyone said, okay, that's fine. We'll agree to that. Well, the same thing is true with daylight savings time. There was a lot of arguments about whether we should do this. And there's still people that argue about daylight savings time. But you've grown up in an area in the, let's say, Western world where you basically are born into a system. And that system just is the way that it is. You've always used US currency, or you've always used the currency that's in your state. But what you didn't realize, the day or the year before I was born, some folks met in Bretton Woods and they separated the US dollar from the gold standard. This was a huge moment. It wasn't actually that long ago, regardless of how old you think I am. Well, what happened? What happened when we got off this gold standard? We created what's called fiat currency. And this is by decree. It has value because we say it has value. That's the whole point. Well, we're now living in an era of Bitcoin. What did Bitcoin do? Bitcoin did something tremendously powerful. It literally showed us that if we agree on something having value, it has value. What's amazing about Bitcoin, though, is the fact that this system was created that literally did not require counterparties. And what's amazing about there is there was no money changer in the middle. And if you are a biblical person that's interested in biblical stories, this is one of the things that Jesus did when he walked into the temple. He turned over the money changers' tables. Why? They were the ones that were benefiting off of this interface between you and God. Well, what has happened throughout history is everybody wants to get between you and your money. Bitcoin changed all that. And of course, you think about with cryptography and then with the 2008 crisis, it couldn't have come at a better time. But if you don't understand what actually happened there and what the power of it is, you're missing the real point of crypto. This changed the very nature of man's relationship to authority. Well, what do you mean, Crypto Heartbeat? Well, think about it this way. This is the first time in human history where financial power and political power were separated. All throughout history, the people that had the guns had the money, right? You'd wage a war. You'd kill people and you'd take their gold. It's still happening today, right? We see it happening between NATO and Russia. We're seeing that this old system that is built on the back of an agreement that we just kind of gone along with called fiat currency is deteriorating and will burn in an hour. It is falling apart. And of course, this is the relationship between something that's not tied to real world assets, that's based on basically the whim of central bankers. And essentially, what we've done is what we always do: we over leverage ourselves and we spend ourselves out of existence. And so, what has happened is that the sovereign debt of nations has gotten so out of control that essentially it's going to lead to the collapse of the monetary system. Now, do I know when that's going to happen? I don't. But I want to show you something that's really significant in all this is that this is our new money. Okay, what do you mean by that? This is our new money. Well, you're in the mining town and somebody says, hey, I propose that we use silver. Okay, I say we use these rocks or these tokens or these sticks, or I say we do this. And everyone goes, well, okay, let's agree that that's value. That's all it is. So here's what's interesting about crypto. Let's take a look at Hex, for example. There's a group of people, there's probably 150,000 of them. If you ask them, what is money, or what would you like money to be? And they would say Hex. Why? Because they have a shared experience with a community of people. Hey, well, yeah, Richard created this and T-shares, and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So there's a community that organically was built out of this idea that Hex was a better Bitcoin. Well, it's an extension of the same thing, right? Censorship resistant, no counterparty risk. Wow, immutable contract. I like the way that this does this. I can lock this up in a stake. I can get T-shares and I can get, benefit by holding, and this props up the price. I get it. I love it. Well, who's it for? Is it for people who are really into Bitcoin? No, they call it scam. Well, think about Hex and think about the community of Hex like you think about that mining town. There's a culture and a community. So what has happened with Hex in this community is it's created its own digital nation. That digital nation does not have borders, but it does have rules and it does have a leader. But let's think about this. Money of the future is about a group of people making an agreement that it is money. and it's real. So what are the macro stories? Well, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now 40 other countries are saying, you know what? We don't like the way that this US dollar uh, hegemony has taken over and basically, created not only indebtedness, but control. So we're going to look at doing something differently. Okay, well, that's a sign of the times. Well, here we have this new economic order that is being ushered in by cryptography and, crypto. We call it crypto. Well, everyone wants their cryptocurrency to win. The Bitcoin maxis, they want everyone to adopt Bitcoin, right? All the hexagons, they want everyone to adopt hex. Well, probably the people in the TNM, they'd probably love everyone to adopt Texan. And then there's some people in the Philippines, they might say, well, I really want you to adopt Ophir. And on and on and on again. But what are the tokens that have done well? The ones that have been able to build a community and had its network effects benefit them. This world is a very, very big place. But we're going back to the origin because at the core of transactions is agreement. Whatever it is that we're selling or buying or trading, we have to agree that they're of equal value, right? So think about if you were said, hey, you know what? I got this old truck. I'll trade it for a boat. Well, maybe somebody out there's like, hey, I got this boat. It's been sitting around for a long time and I really need a work truck. Hey, we might find a way to agree that those things are of equal value. And if they're not, I may have to pitch in some money in order to cover the cost. But when you understand how big of a deal it is that a community of a people can essentially declare their own value, you realize, hold on a second, the most important thing is actually community and the agreement within that community. In the past, people said, the calendar is changing to my calendar. I am Pope Gregory the Eighth, and I am going to, in the year of our Lord, 1582, we're going to cut 10 days out of this calendar and we're going to create this new Gregorian calendar. And it was an edict and people had to follow it because they were in charge. Well, what's happening today? Governments around the world who are seeing things slip out of their hands are creating edicts. You will not use this token. You will not use this token. You will use our central bank digital currencies. Why? Because they have power, right? They wield power and authority, and they're seeing it slip away. In my opinion, a future that is based on abundance and not scarcity is within reach. The problem is people know that people are tribal and people know, and I recognize that. So why ever try to put a round peg in a square hole? Why not understand where community is already existent? And in this case, where does community exist? Well, we see community as it relates to nationalism. There are people who have pride in their nation. We see this in sports all the time. Well, currently, currency is based on where you live, but you can't use Australian dollars in Texas. You can't do it. But what's amazing is there's a group of people who value hex. And you know what? They'd be happy to transact between them with hex because they value it the same. Well, this is no different than fiat currencies anywhere. It's not currently a means of exchange, but it could be. If you found some hexagon and you're like, man, will you take hex for this? You'd be like, yeah, you're damn right I will. Why? Because they believe and they're part of that community. This is such a powerful idea. And I want you to understand that by promoting and supporting true decentralized finance, and this means a place in order to transact that, i.e., the pulse chain, is an opportunity. And that opportunity is to ensure that whatever you decide is your new money can be your new money if you want it to be. What's really interesting is that we saw El Salvador make Bitcoin legal tender. It is my dream, and I believe a prediction, that there will be a country on planet Earth who will decide that their new money is true DeFi. So let's just imagine this scenario. An existing country somewhere says, you know what, we could go the route of CBDCs, or we could adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, or there's a third way. We could create our own DeFi immutable contract on the blockchain that has some kind of savings component to it. We could program our own new money. But just like at the beginning of America, when people were like, hey, we could be kings, we won the war. They understood the tyranny of the kingship, and they realized we have an opportunity sitting in front of us. And they said, you know what? We're going to give away the power to the people. The question is there a leader or a group of leaders in the world who are willing to say, you know what if we gave the money away? And in that lies something incredibly powerful. Leadership. Will someone lead and embrace giving away the money? And how would that work? A country and its leaders would say, this is a new world, a new economic order. We have the ability to create new money. Well, how do we enable our people to come out of their current circumstances and situations? Well, one of the ways in which we've done it, and we've seen it happen, is let's take the Hexicans. Let's take the exact same model. Some country says, you know what? We're going to take this contract. Well, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do an airdrop. Well, is there any precedent for an airdrop? Well, yeah, in crypto there is. But guess what? When they wanted to settle the West in 1860, they created the Homestead Act. And they literally said, anyone who wants to invest in this, we will give you 160 acres. And that's how they settled the West. It was an airdrop of land. You do the same thing. You literally say, all right, we're going to do an airdrop to our people. However, it's based on how much you want to invest in each other. We are not going to hold back a certain amount of token. And this is where it gets really interesting. Could you imagine if leaders within a country said, we are going to forsake the strength of our centralized authority and give it away to the people? So what would that look like? Well, there would be people who invested more because they understand what's happening. Well, look at the scenario of the pulse chain and the sacrifice. It's such an interesting model. So if you come in and you sacrifice, and you think about the sacrificial system at the altar, you give something that you have of value to you, and you will get credit for that in the new system. Well, some people are going to be like, I get it. I'm going big. I'm backing up the truck. Let's go. Well, they would receive more of the airdrop than someone who didn't. But what's really amazing about this idea that is a country embraced DeFi and truly said to the people, you can participate in this. We are not going to dominate the supply. They might have some supply, very similar to Richard Hart being the benevolent leader that he is. But people would be on an even footing. No matter who you are, you had the opportunity to come to this contract and you'd be able to say, all right, I'm going to sacrifice this. Well, if you really understood the power of DeFi, you'd recognize that any country who did that is saying to the world, you can invest in our people. Think about that. This country, not adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, but creating their own decentralized currency and making it a means of exchange in addition to what they're currently using. They say to the world, you now have the ability to invest in the good faith and credit, the ability, strength, and creative ability of our people, and you could invest in our country. Well, let me ask you this. In 623 days, Hex went up 10,000x. Why? Well, more buyers than sellers and promoting people to lock up and hold. Well, what if you had the same dynamics within this new country, this new money? What if you literally said, well, you have this opportunity, you can lock it up and you can receive these this interest? Okay, that sounds really interesting. Well, some people would. But the rest of the world would be looking on and they would say, whoa, hold on a second. Do you realize what this is going to do for people? This is going to empower them. And people that had very little, if the world comes around, would end up having potentially a lot. What would that do for a country? It would transition them from the state that they're in into a state of abundance. But this is not what centralized players want. Centralized players do not want you having power. And that's why the American idea is so interesting, is that those that could have been kings decided not to. Decided to give it away. And what have we gotten to? This is the human experience, hoarding and lording. I'm going to hoard this and lord it over you. We have an opportunity to reset the system. And this opportunity to reset the system is literally in our hands. The question is, do leaders see the power of giving it away? And I believe that if you can give away what you want to receive. You want to see your country thrive or your community thrive. And so that's at the very, very core of my entire ethos in crypto, which is, how do you unlock abundance? How do you unlock generosity? You let the people go. Let my people go, right? Sound familiar? Yes. And how do you do it? By empowering them. DeFi has this amazing thing, because you know for a fact that there's not somebody in Washington or somebody at the Federal Reserve who can change a database record and print more. Can't be done. Well, what happens when you have confidence in your economic system? Even if it is by decree, even if it's not backed by something. Well, the problem is it's not backed by something, and people can monkey with it and print more, unilaterally or arbitrarily. This is why we have a challenge, and this is why it will fail. So the new system that has separated the political power from the financial power resets the table. And to me, this could be one of the greatest shifts from scarcity to abundance the world has ever seen. But this would really upset the elites and the powerful. And they see it right now. You know why they're coming after things? You know why there's so much concern? Because in the dark, back, smoky rooms, they know that the cat's out of the bag. They know Bitcoin. They're trying to. Look at BlackRock. They are trying to get as much of the hash power and as much of the businesses that own Bitcoin. They want to centralize it. And they see that they would have power if they control the currency, right? He who holds the gold rules. Well, that's happening right now. I see a future in which people from around the world in communities of trust are decreeing their own value. We're building digital nations. And to me, people have to get it and understand it, but it's an agreement that we make. And rather than an edict from on high, you will eat bugs, you will use our government wallet, you will have a social credit score, you can't travel unless your little coat is green. That is here. But if you do change the money, and you change really the paradigm of who's in control, and you remove the middleman, which is the whole promise of crypto. It's the whole purpose and point, that using cryptography, you can take the middleman out. And what does that create? Well, even the fact that Bitcoin did that, now we have centralized players like the big financial folks who are doing everything they can to consolidate that to control you. They want to control the money. This is one of the most amazing times in human history, but it is also going to be one of the most messy. But this is why community matters. So when I get on Twitter, X, and I see people just ripping each other a new one and destroying each other, I realize, I'm like, this is human nature. People need leadership. They need to recognize that, you know what? You have to consider others in addition to yourself if you're going to build community. You have to at least consider them. That's why the future is going to be built on existing centers of trust. So, is it going to be a nationalistic thing? Yeah, maybe a country that has pride, right? Hungary, that would be a really interesting place. Who are the people that actually have a semblance of national pride? Maybe they do. But then there may be organizations. There may be people who believe a certain thing. There may be a certain people group. I think Africa has an incredible opportunity. I think Southeast Asia has an incredible opportunity. I think smaller countries have an amazing opportunity. And it's really cool. And the reason I bring this up is I'm actually having a conversation with a new nation. Why did we create the Texan token? Right? To support a group of people who want to be independent. There's nothing more powerful. And it's not about just a means of exchange. It's about how the people, we can reset the system. We can reboot the system financially. And we have the tools in our hands. But most people just want to shoot each other in the foxhole and not recognize the commonalities that we have with one another is what ties us together. And actually, the trust of going, yeah, I think Richard Heart's pretty cool, man. Yeah, I think he's really good. And yeah, I like that hexagon logo. Why don't you embrace that then? If that's your community and that's your group, that's where the power is uniting, right? People in Texas, I think it's an incredible way in which the people of Texas could say, you know what? If we come together, there's power, and it's not centralized power. And we can come together and we can demand things because it's true. If you control the money, you control things. But this is so incredible. It's like the greatest judo move economically that's ever happened, that you have the ability, but it requires that you have adoption in community. Well, what's the best thing to do? Hey, you know what? We kind of agree on the same things. We kind of live near each other and, we got to get along. Well, think about time, how I started this whole thing. Well, some people said an edict in 1582 and said, we're using a new calendar. Well, people agree, and that's the calendar we're using today. But the same thing is true, is that what if everybody from every different town used a different time? We could never meet anywhere. It would not be efficient. So the same thing is true with money. But the natural progression of money is not going to be, as it's fracturing like this, isn't going to be one ring to rule them all. It's going to be, where do you want to set down your economic energy? Because all that crypto is a reflection of you. That's why it follows Metcalfe's law, because it's a communication network. As people adopt something, they put a piece of themselves. What is money? When you put something into Coinbase and then you swap to ETH and send your ETH to your MetaMask and then you bridge it over and then you buy something on the Pulse chain, it's still you. It just went through some filters. It's still the reflection of your own creative ability. You worked for that money. Somebody paid you likely by the hour. You sat in the truck and you thought, rather than buying yourself a case of Bud Light, you would put that into Pulse or PulseX or Hex or Texan or Ophir or whatever it is you like. And I don't really care. There's enough people in trusted communities that you don't have to say, everybody's got to adopt my token. No, this will all work itself out because only the strong will survive. But in my opinion, you have to understand the power of what we have in front of us. But you know what? The whole point of Marxism is to get you to fight with your neighbor so you're not in unity. Right? Why did they go in and take out the religious leaders? Why did the Nazis go? Anything that threatened their centralized power, they took out. Anything that could be a threat. It's the same thing today. Whether it's racially, whatever it may be, is they want to divide and conquer. Because they know that if they can keep you off sides, you're not going to get together and take over the place. But the big question is this: if you found yourself in a situation like the early founding fathers of America, and you had the opportunity to create a new system, what kind of system would you create? One that's just better for you? Yeah, I'm going to be king. I think most people think that way. I don't care about anyone else except myself. I'll step on your head to get what I want. Crypto's different. And this era of money changing, right, is so significant. It's mostly the reason I think people don't get it is because they don't understand what money is. It is literally just a proxy for your labor. That's all it is. You are the value. You create the value. Some people are really smart, right? You're an anesthesiologist, right? Right? You got a risky job in that you're helping keep people alive, but you went to a lot of school and you invested a lot of time and they pay you like $700,000 a year to poke people in the spinal cord. Well, the same thing is true with anything. You might drive a truck or whatever it may be. The point is, it's you. And this society and world values it at a certain rate. So, folks, when you commit economic value, We know that it follows these cycles, but a piece of you is in that contract. You're bringing value to the table, and you're just hoping that it's going to store that value well and grow in the future. But if you want the indicators of really what's going, it's all about adoption and growth. And I would say the narrative is so powerful because that's what people build around community. Why is it so powerful that Trump raises so much more money when his mugshot goes up? Because people identify with being targeted and they go, I know what that feels like, right? It galvanizes things. Why the SEC thing? It's actually a really good thing for Hex. It's a really good thing for Pulse Chain because it galvanizes a community. You're under attack. That's why actually I think Hexicans did so well, is that Richard got called a scammer. Like, he's not a scammer. He didn't do himself a tremendous amount of favors. However, but people saw that attack and they wanted to come to his aid because he was coming to their aid. Without this kind of tension, without this kind of difficulty, you don't build community. This happens all the time. If you look at fraternities, right? I thought it was funny. I saw somebody tweet something. They're saying, there's paternity leave and there's, maternity leave. Why isn't there fraternity leave so I can hang with my bros? I thought it was hilarious. But fraternity, this idea of how do you build relationships? I think about people that have been in the service and went to war together. The closest brothers in arms. Why? Because they went through something really difficult together. Why is hazing a thing? Because when you go through something difficult together, it bonds you together. What have Hexicans gone through? Some difficult times together. But here's the thing, just like anything, you want to come out the other side, you got to stick together. But it's true. The entire financial system is going to crumble around us. And we have basically two options, the centralized planners say. We can be CBDCs of US dollar denominated stablecoins, or maybe these BRICS countries will do their thing. I'm going to say both are worthless. The opportunity is for regular people to come together in community through communication networks and declare our own value. That's what's happening. That's real leadership in this world. And I believe that someone in some country somewhere is going to get that and go, wow, do you mean we literally could give away what we want to receive? We could transform our country overnight because the world would come to our doorstep and invest in our people? Yes. Well, what's at stake? What do we have to do? You have to let go. You have to give it away. If you've ever listened to me talk about what has driven me to do all this stuff and what's at the very core of my calling as a person and why I have purpose in life, you would know the story of the feeding of the 5,000. And one of the things that's dramatic about that story is imagine yourself looking in on this scene. It's the first century Palestine. There's this guy named Jesus who's out in the outside of town on a hill. And people hear that he's going to be talking about some stuff, and they're pretty amazed. They saw some miracles and some amazing things happen. They don't know a whole lot about, but they want to go listen to this guy because he seems like he knows what he's talking about. And so families get together. 5,000 men, they say. That's a pretty big group, right? They're saying maybe 10 to 15,000 people. In the first century, if you're leaving town, chances are you're not going to 7-Eleven or Applebee's. Right? There's no place, there's no restaurants, there's no corner store. So you got to take everything with you. So you go outside of town to see this guy talk. And he's got some buddies with him, these disciple guys. Meanwhile, they're out there in the middle of this field. And Andrew, one of Jesus's followers, says to him, hey, how are we going to feed all these people? It's getting that time, you've been talking for a long time, as preachers typically do. And here you are, everybody's hungry. How are we going to, we couldn't feed all these people, right? We can't even give them a bite. You know how expensive that is? And meanwhile, a little boy comes up to the back of Andrew and says, hey, you can have my 5 loaves and 2 fish. I often wonder how did the boy get up to Andrew? Likely, he was probably sitting there with his family and was listening to this story, hearing Andrew talk to Jesus, going, hey, how are we going to feed all these people? And just like a boy, naive but full of faith, says, hey, Mom, Dad, can I take the food that we brought? Clearly brought it, right? They had 5 loaves and 2 fish. When have you ever eaten 5 loaves of bread in one sitting? You brought extra. So he grabbed his family's food. He probably had to say to his parents, "Hey, can I take this to Jesus?" And they were probably like, "Oh, son, this isn't enough for 5,000 men." But he's like, but Jesus can do something with this. He's like, "Fine, okay, give it to Jesus." So what does this boy do? He takes 5 loaves and 2 fish and he walks himself up to and gives this to them. And of course, I just imagine what Jesus was looking at, this little boy coming up with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And what did he do? Took the bread and the fish. He prayed, he broke the bread, and he told the disciples to go hand it out. Now, we consider this a miracle in the church, right? We're like, oh, this is a miracle. So the question I ask is, did he reach into a bag and pull out bread and fish? Did he just happen to have a bag of holding behind him? No. The people that were watching this boy have this conversation with his family saying, we would give all that we have because this guy we know is a miracle worker. And they literally saw that and they said, you know what? We brought extra too. You know what happened? The disciples took those 5 loaves and 2 fish and they went to offer it to people. And you know what people did? They said, you know what? They collected 12 basketfuls left over. Why? How? And some people would say, oh, Crypto Heartbeat, this is heresy. No, he just produced matter from no matter. And I would say this, the community of people has more than enough. And when they see acts of generosity, they say, you know what? Yeah, I can share as well. So where did the 12 basketfuls left over? This idea of scarcity is in our heart. I worked for this. This is mine. This is not yours. But when you see somebody that's willing to give you, it unlocks something. So could a country or could leadership actually say and step out in faith like the boy and say, you know what? We're going to forego our centralized controlling and lording over people, and we're going to give it away this time. And we're going to transform from scarcity to abundance. That is what is at stake. What do you mean you're using your money? Yep, we're using our money. We're going to give away what we want to receive. We're going to understand that abundance is actually the very framework of all of creation. We see this. We plant one kernel of corn. 2 ears grow up on that stalk, and they each have 16 rows on each ear of corn. So it's a 1 to 8, 1600. It's a 1 to 1600 ratio. That's what the ground produces. Because you don't germinate a seed, you don't make it rain, and you don't make the sun shine. You partner with the creation, and it creates an abundance, a yield. Oh, I've heard that before. The yield. It's interesting. Yes. Folks, there's a harvest that's sitting right in front of us. There's a financial future and a new economic order that is abundant. And it comes from us in community, not from centralized players saying, we're changing the calendar. Or this is what time it is. No, we're deciding what time it is. It's go time. Thanks for joining the Pulse today. My name is Matt. Let's get into the chat. I did this backwards this time. Hexyquinn, number 1. What's going on? Godfather J6, David Lee, all the way from southwestern Indiana. He's running the general store for everybody there. Samantha, good afternoon. All right. Appreciate you, Mr. Heartbeat. Thanks so much. And Bobby Hexelrod. Yeah, I lost him at the gym. He's the one. He's pumping the iron. Checks my pulse. Afternoon, all. Good to see you. Rich Cranium, Crypto Heartbeat. Good day, brethren. What is up? Mixed Crypto Arts is in the house. If y'all get independence, I'm going south. See, that's the thing. It gives people permission, literally. If Texas becomes independent, leads in the world. Why? Because other people realize it's possible. Let's do it. Let's reboot the system. Let's preserve what is great about America and Texas. If you're somebody in Texas, sign the petition. We need this group of people to come together because we're declaring our sovereignty. Charles Stone, good to see you, my friend. You're so very well spoken, Matt. You think good. You think so good. Reminds me of Forrest Gump. Mr. Rock Jockey, what's going on? Ease and chill. Good to see you. Drix, what's up, Drix? This is no rags. Please like and subscribe. That's right. This is not a rag stream. You can like and subscribe, and I appreciate you. Sam Kemp, talk about somebody who is looking at ways in which to support independence in Texas, but also he gets this. Sam Kemp gets this. He understands. Wow, there's such opportunity sitting in our hands, and people just need to take responsibility for it. That's the beauty of DeFi. There's no centralized organization. There's no marketing department. No, you take it upon yourself. And what ends up happening? It's grassroots. That's where this is it. Let my people go, right? Freeing the captives out of debt and consumer slavery. And really, it's a rebooting of the system, and it puts back in the hands of people. It decentralizes the power. It's out of control, my friends. Nothing but truth here. Love it. Crypto Ethos. Thanks so much. Appreciate you. All on here. I'm going to go back and watch the beginning later. Thanks, man. DJ and Hexagon. Yes, finally made it to a live stream. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you folks. Hey, you've been watching things, right? This whole Grayscale thing, this win, the court that basically said to Uniswap, hey, we're not going to hold you liable for these degenerate coins is a big deal. Hopefully it's foreshadowing of what's to come, and that the SEC continues to lose cases, including the one with Richard Hart, and we move forward into one of the most massive bull runs we've ever seen. That'd be nice. But I'd like to see leadership in the world. I'd like to see people unlock generosity. I would like to see us transform things by us declaring our own sovereignty and us taking back the power that has always been ours. We've given it away. We've given away our authority. We have the authority. You do not get your rights from the state. These are inalienable rights given to you by a creator. For Black Diamond, does this program have commercials? Brought to you by the National Association of Voluntary Taxation. I swear to you, if you created the National Association of Voluntary Taxation, you would have liberal people that feel so bad that they want to give more taxes, right? Which actually is not true. They're some of the least generous people in the world. Peso Dude, been a while. Miss you guys. Thanks for being here. Good to see you back. Charles Stone, I often think about how grateful we should be for the development of the internet. Without it, the way to build it, we would not have cryptography of digital assets. Absolutely. And then think about censorship. All of these things, they thought, hey, this is a really good thing, and it naturally progressed. And what they didn't realize is it's the ultimate poison pill, because the centralized players, everything's being brought out into the light, right? Somebody said to me, they said, you know that Jesus is going to come back on the clouds? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, what do we call cloud computing? Is this all exposing everything that people did in the darkness to the light? I thought that's pretty funny. Is that possible? Coming in the clouds? Is this actually a tool by which good is going to win over evil? And that a part of that is actually us communicating through the cloud, and that we're literally becoming unified in one mind, and trust is built, and that we take off these shackles of oppression? Well, it's starting with the money. It's very possible, my friends. Hang on a sec. My camera has to reset sometimes. Mobius, what's going on? Good to see you. See who else is here. If you got any questions, be happy to answer them. What an amazing time. I feel a lot more energized about a potential bull run. We got the halvening coming up hopefully in April. I think January 1st is like big time go time, but this is it, right? This has been the longest bear market. These ETFs coming, whoever is going to get the first ETF is going to probably win with Bitcoin. So much retail money is going to come in. It's coming, folks. This is the time. What's funny is I came in during really the bull run, right? That's when I came in and started the channel and all this stuff. And it was like, well, yeah, there was some great time. I got $600 into Hex, turned into 15 grand, bought my daughter a car. But you know what? I haven't seen this kind of cycle before. This is it, man. This is it. This is where the fortunes are made. Got to pick the right horse to ride. And to me, you gotta build where there is community and agreement and unity and trust. We're building digital nations, my friend. This is powerful, powerful ideas. And it's very, very similar to the opportunity to create something new, just like the founding fathers had, right? Hey, we have an opportunity. We could create a kingdom, or we could create a republic. Maybe we should just start paying in Hex. There you go. And some people could and would, right? I mean, think about this for a second. Let's say you got chickens in your backyards and you just got extra eggs, and you go over to your neighbor and you're like, "Hey, I've got some extra eggs I'd love to give to you." And you're like, and the neighbor's like, "Oh man, that's so nice. Hey, we've got some tomatoes and we just have more of those. Here, let me give you the, oh, you don't have to give me the tomatoes. No, 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 we want to." That happens all the time, right? Was that money? No. You had some extra eggs, they had some extra tomatoes, and next thing you know, everybody's having breakfast together. Peso dude, you really push the dueling economy. We need to have a community payrail app, merchant window stickers that say PRC20 is accepted here. That's coming, Peso dude, and you're absolutely right. I really do think, and this is, I hope and pray that what Elon Musk is doing, rather than enslaving us with this new everything app, that actually will empower all of these things. As strange as it may seem, this new PYUSD, which is the stable coin of that was created for PayPal. Ultimately, anywhere PayPal is accepted, you would be able to swap into this because it's an ERC20 on Ethereum. You could swap from Hex to that and buy anything anywhere through the PayPal app that PayPal has accepted. That's a huge extension of the value of Hex, and people don't see it. Now, I wouldn't sit in PYUSD, but that one action of creating that stable coin with PayPal has actually enabled Hex to be able for you to pay for something as long as PayPal is accepted, because you can swap into the PYUSD. I'm not advocating you do that, but that's a development that most people don't see. They're like, "Oh, I don't like the contract." Fine. You just paved the way for Hex to be used to buy something direct online. But more and more of that's coming, and I think you're absolutely right. But that will. PRC20 is accepted here. And I think what is going to end up happening is it's still value wherever you put it. You put it in Texan, you put it in Ophir, you put it in Hex, you put it in Pulse Chain, wherever. This can be bridged to wherever because it's your economic energy. Magnus, what's up? Hit the likes, folks. Oh, look who's here. Look who's here. Chuck Norris. You know you're doing something right. Hey, Matt, how are you this fine Thursday? I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for the roundhouse kick on the stream. You are the quintessential Texan. Trinity Realm, what's going on? Awesome. And let's see here. Romanian Dan. Dude, I haven't seen Romanian Dan in forever. Have you been streaming Romanian Dan? I feel like yeah. There was a stream there. What was the worst damn crypto show? Something like that. Fire. Exciting times. Rich Liberation. Thanks so much. Love Rich is here. Tin Top. Hex Space Diamonds. Beginning of the beginning. Hey, it's our opportunity. Liberty or Death. Hey, Crypto Heartbeat. I'm finally home in Ohio. I was just south of Richmond for the Rich Man. Yeah. How about that? Oliver Anthony Music. I use Texan token in Ohio. Need for a Buckeye token unless you want to make one. Hey, that's the thing. Where does trust exist? Is it in a state? Is it in a country? Is it in a community? Is it in a religious group? Is it in a region? It just depends. Where do people want to come together? Finn Bear, you weren't notified? Well, welcome. Late to the show. Texit imminent. Well, the way things are going, you know what I think? Here's a prediction I have. I think actually this border issue is actually what drives Texit ultimately. Right, the invasion on the southern border and all this stuff. Like the Biden administration is suing Texas over putting these flotation. Oh, you're going to kill the fish? No, you're killing children because the cartels are basically trafficking them. It's so backwards and inside out, and upside down. But I think that actually that's really the thing that drives these legislators to say we have to do. Like Texas is the option. It's interesting. What is the catalyst for independence? And I think it's probably going to be the southern border issue. Hex Force One, what's going on? 2 more weeks. Yeah, that's it. 2 more weeks. And then we get to enjoy. If Liquid Loans got a debit card, we could, using USDL with our own ecosystem. Yeah, there you go. They've got some things up their sleeves. So they got a lot of resources. I'm hoping that we see that infrastructure come. And you watch. I think the X app, and I think all of this, all of these approvals that Elon Musk is getting. I mean, if the fact that he's going to put Doge up there, that it's probably going to be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge. I don't know if Litecoin's in there, but there's going to be things accepted. And if one thing is accepted from Ethereum, everything's accepted, right? Because we can swap. That's the key. So the future is your economic value that you've put into these ERC-20s isn't going away unless, you know, people decide to rug it or, you know, it's got a hack or something. But yeah, this is the future, my friends. Does anyone know why I can't bridge into Pulse Chain? I have not heard that it's down, so might need to get some help. You could probably go into the Pulse Chain chat on Telegram. That would be helpful. Folks, thanks for joining the Pulse today. I want you to be encouraged that the power is actually in your hands in community with one another. So stop shooting people in the foxhole. Let's come around this. Let's realize that it's through this crucible of, you know, all the FUD and all the hate and all the challenges and all the SEC and all of these things that actually galvanizes a community. Because if we stick together, what ends up happening is, you know, like your friend Somi says, look at all of the influencers. Look at all the people. There are so many people in this community. There's so many people that are gifted. And guess what? When those green candles start coming, boy, everybody's happy. I'm happy now. But we need to realize that the community is more valuable than you think it is because we decree our own value. What do you mean you're not using what do you mean you're using your money? We're not using your money. That's what we're not using. Folks, take care of yourself and do not mess with Texas. Take care.